Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third of our Myanmar Teacher Takeaway webinars, presented to you, brought to you by the British Council. Today's event is community-based inclusive education, and we really hope that this is something that you can find very useful both in the theory and in your classrooms. Now, as we begin, and for those of you who have joined us before, you'll know we have a few slides to introduce to you, just to give you some context. I'd like to introduce a little bit about today's webinars. My name is Fraser Buick, as those of you who have joined us before will know, and I'm very happy again to be able to bring this webinar to you today and be the facilitator for today's event. Now, a little bit of context about the Teacher Takeaway webinars. Very much we hope that these events, these webinars, will help teachers in a practical sense as well as in theory. We really want to prevent useful, continuous professional development ideas that support teachers engaged in English language teaching, ELT, and other English-related educational contexts within Myanmar. The webinars will offer local perspectives, so all of our speakers are from Myanmar and will have insight into Myanmar on topics of global and local interest and share relevant resources that teachers can reference for their own classroom use. As today's title slide mentioned, today's focus is community-based inclusive education. But from that, we're going to dig a little bit deeper and focus specifically on UDL, or Universal Design for Learning. So we'll be exploring some ideas and tips shared by our fellow educators today and look at how differentiated instruction can support more inclusive and autonomous classroom environments. Today's event will offer principles in these areas, but also offer practical ideas that we very much hope teachers can take away and use in their classrooms. Now, as I mentioned, there are a few slides I'd like to introduce you at the beginning, and these are what we call housekeeping slides. We very much hope that today's event is a safe place for everyone, somewhere where everyone can contribute and enjoy the content of today's webinar. We do ask that in the chat box, although we do encourage everyone to add their comments and provide any questions that they have, please don't share any personal information or contact details or any promotional messages. We also ask that you're polite and considerate and show mutual respect to all of our colleagues in today's event. As you'll note, the microphones and cameras are off today, so interaction will be largely through the Q&A box and the chat box. We do hope that you can contribute through those mediums. We do ask, as I said, that we respect each other in the event. For today's event, we do have moderators who are supporting us, and unfortunately, we may have to remove anyone who can't follow those rules to ensure it is an inclusive and safe environment for everyone. In terms of inclusivity, we do have two additional functions today that we think, or we hope, will help those of you joining us who perhaps would prefer to use the native Burmese language, or indeed may find it easier to watch sign language interpretation for today's event. If you look at your Zoom menu, you should see this at the top or the bottom of your screen. You should see a globe icon. By clicking on that, you can select the language for today's event, whether it be English or Burmese, or if you would prefer, you can choose sign language interpretation, and you should be able to see the sign language interpreter on your screen. I should note, if you do choose sign language interpretation, you may not be able to see the PPT slides. So please choose whichever of those is suitable for yourself. So as I've mentioned, we will be taking questions and comments through the comments, or the chat box and the Q&A box, which you should also see on your Zoom menu. We would ask that questions only in the Q&A box, and any comments, please feel free to share in the chat box as we move through the event. Today's event is being recorded, and although the cameras and microphones are off, it's important to mention that because we may read out the name if a question is asked in the comments box. So if you are asking a question, you may want to do so anonymously. You have that option when asking the question if you don't want your name to be read out. At the end of today's session, we will be sharing some resources for you that you can also take away. And there is a survey. We really appreciate your feedback on the survey. If you can complete the survey, there is an e-certificate available to you for participating in today's event. and that will be available upon completion of the survey today. So thank you in advance for your feedback. Finally, we have a safeguarding email. So if you have any concerns about today's event, whether it be content, something shared in the chat, or anything that you feel you would like to tell us about based on today's event, we have this email available to you. So please take a note of that. And if you would like to contact us, that is the email to do it through. So thank you again in advance for any feedback that you can provide. If you would like any more information on our safeguarding and child protection policy, you can follow this link also on the screen. The PPTs will be shared after this event, probably by next week upon the registration page where you registered for today's webinar. Okay, so let's move into the content for today. Our two speakers today are Aimya, a facilitator and inclusion advisor, and Saraivan Sunlian, an educator and researcher, both originating from Myanmar. I mentioned my name before, Fraser Buick. I'm a senior academic consultant with the British Council, and I'll be facilitating today's event, including the Q&A after today's presentation. Today's presentation will be 70 minutes long, or the event will be 70 minutes long, I should say, and our presenters will be presenting a joint presentation. That will last for approximately 40 minutes, after which we have 20 minutes for Q&A, and we really do appreciate the questions that you provide in the Q&A for that, so we can pose those to our presenters. The last 5 minutes of today's event will be for resources and also the survey, as I mentioned before, just to give you those to take away from today's event, and we hope that you'll find those useful as well. Okay, I think that's enough from me at the beginning. I hope everyone enjoys today's event. I would now like to hand over to our speakers. Aimya, I'll hand over to you. I'll stop sharing and allow you to share your slides.
Okay, thank you, Fraser. Okay, thank you all. I hope you will be enjoying our session. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, thank you again for all joining our session. Today we will discuss about the inclusive practice in education and universal design for the learning principle. Here, in this session, we will focus on the inclusive education means, and also why does inclusive teaching matter? Who can benefit from the inclusive teaching? And also, how can teachers promote inclusion in the classroom? And also learning environments and using universal design for learning principles. Okay, let's start our session. Okay, before starting our lesson, our presentation, let's discuss about this question. What does inclusive education mean? How do you define inclusive education? Okay, you can write down or you can type your answer into the chat box. Please write down your own answer, own definition about the inclusive education means. Yes, very good. Everyone included. Thank you. Yes, teachers and students engage together. Thank you, Mimi. Yes. Yes, it's me. No one is left behind. Very good answer, Kaima. Thank you. Yes, no one is left behind. Yes, everybody can learn together. Yes, all together with yes, cooperation. Yes, included regardless of their race, religion, and other background status. Yes, very good. Thank you. Yeah, can everybody, even if there are disabled sound engaged in. Yes. Yeah. Okay, now let's discuss about the meaning. So inclusive education means providing equitable opportunities for all students, regardless of their abilities, backgrounds, or differences, to learn together in the same classroom. That you all you already mentioned in the chat about. This is the meaning of the inclusive education. mean, and we need to emphasize the importance of valuing diversity and create a supportive environment for every student. So that is very correct. No one left behind. So every student have a chance to learn together in the same classroom. This is the meaning of the inclusive education. Thank you for all your answer. Okay, now who can benefit from the inclusive teaching or inclusive education? Okay, please write down in the chat box. Okay, who can get a benefit from the inclusive education? Okay, let's see the answer. So it can benefit to all students. This student with a disability and student without disability can get a benefits. Okay, let's see how they can get a benefits. So inclusive teaching ensures that students with disability have the same access to the educational opportunities as their peers. This helps prevent exclusion and promotes the sense of belonging. And also the second one, they can have academic achievement. While students with a disability are included in the regular same classroom, they have the chance to learn from the same curriculum and the same teaching methods as like their peer. With appropriate support and accommodation, they can have higher academic outcomes and they can have a higher academic achievement. And the third one is they can develop their social and emotional skill. So inclusive education settings provide opportunities for students with disability to interact with the student without disability, enhancing their social and emotional skill. So this interaction fosters assistance. Okay, now let's see how students without disability can benefit from inclusive education. Inclusive education exposes students without disability to diverse perspectives, abilities, and backgrounds. This exposure cultivates empathy and greater understanding of the world richness. And also the next is a collaboration skill. Collaborating with a peer who have a different learning needs enhance the communication and teamwork skills of the student without disability. They learn to adapt their communication, their environment, and teaching method, which are valuable life skills. Okay, the next one is it can reduce stigma. Okay, stigma means stereotype. Inclusive education helps break down the stereotypes and reduce the stigma associated with disability. So students without disability grow up with a more inclusive mindset and promoting acceptance and equality in the society. So it is benefit for students with disability and students without disability, but also it's benefit for the society. Okay, now let's see about the real-life success stories and research findings. Okay, have you ever heard about the Henry Ford's? Yeah. Okay, Henry Frost, a young boy with he has we can call cerebral palsy. That means the difficulty with the intelligence was included his neighborhood school rather than being placed in the separated settings. With the support of his classmates and teacher, he not only excelled academically but also became an inspiration for his peer, promoting acceptance and understanding. Henry Frost's story is very famous in 2020, 2013. So you can search his story in the Facebook and Twitter. You can type his name in the Facebook, so you can see the hashtag with the Henry Ford. We stand with the Henry Frost like this. And these success stories and research finding underscore the transformative impact of inclusive education on both students with disability and students without disability, emphasizing the positive outcomes of empathy, cooperation, and supported learning environment. And also there are numerous success stories and research findings that showcase the positive outcomes of inclusive education. Here a very popular program. So we call a unified sport program is similar with the Special Olympic program that bring together students with and without disability to participate in the sport together. These programs have demonstrated improved social interactions, communication skills, and self-esteem among the participants. So you can find the link from the below the PowerPoint slide, and you can find the any pros and this program in here. And also, it also have an academic achievement. So results study have shown that students with disability in the inclusive setting can achieve better academic outcomes compared to the segregated settings. This attribute to exposure to higher expectations quality instruction, and it also have a long-term benefits. Inclusive education prepares students for the real world by teaching them to navigate diverse environments. And also studies suggest that students who experience with the inclusive education are more likely to begin advocate for inclusion in their community. Okay, now let's see how to create safe and respectful classroom environment. So creating a safe and respectful classroom environment is essential for fostering a positive learning experience and promoting inclusive education. Such an environment encourages open communication, empowers students to share their thoughts and concerns, and enhance their overall well-being. Okay, let's see. Why is this important? The first one is important for student psychological safety. You already know about this situation. When your student feels safe, they are more likely to take a risk, and they are more likely to ask a question, and they are more likely to express their opinions without fear or judgment already get. So teacher must create this psychological safety to the students. And also it develops a positive relationship. A respectful classroom promotes positive relationship between students and teachers, and also students and students, which contribute to a supportive community of learners. And the third one is promote inclusivity. So an environment where diversity is celebrated and respectful helps all students feel valued, regardless of their backgrounds or ability. Okay, the next one is promote student confidence and participation. This is very similar with the first one. Safe space encourage students to participate actively, contribution to the higher engagement and deeper learning. If your student feels safe, so they are more likely to participate your group work, your classroom activities, and they eager to learn. They are enthusiastic and they eager to learn more and more. And also, it has to develop the students' emotional well-being. Students who feel safe are more emotionally secure, leading to reduce their stress and anxiety level. If your students have anxiety with their parents and their community, but in your classroom, if your classroom is safe and respectful classroom, they reduce their stress and anxiety in your classroom. Okay, now here are some strategies for the differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction recognizes that students have the diverse learning styles, abilities, and needs. Tailoring instruction to meet these differences promote more effective and inclusive learning. Okay, here are some strategies. I think that already mentioned in the first two webinars from Siamin Paimo session and Siamamia Denzatong session. Here are some strategies for the first one is flexible grouping. You must group your students based on their interests and readiness levels or learning style. And also you must assign mixed ability groups for the cooperative project, allowing students to learn from each other and support from each other. And the second one is very assessment methods. Use a very assessment types such as the quiz, project, presentation, and discussing. And give a chance students to demonstrate their understanding through the multiple formats and catering their strengths. And the third one is personalized lesson planning. Develop individualized plan for students with specific needs or learning goal. Need to include accommodations and modifications such as extend time for assessment or alternative ways of demonstrating and understanding. You need to give more time for their assessment and for when they demonstrate their project or their presentation. You need to give more time in their session. And then choice in learning is also one of the strategies for the differentiated instruction. You need to offer student choice in the assignments or project that need to align with the learning objectives. This empowers students to engage with the content in ways that resonate with them. And also, flexible learning materials provide a wide range of resources such as the multimedia, text of various complexity, and interactive tools. And also scaffolded instruction that Xia Minbai already mentioned his section. So this means that scaffolded instruction break down the complex text into the manageable steps, providing support as the student progress. So the teacher gradually reduce his or her support at the time the student begin more and more independence. And also using a regular formatting assessment, use an ongoing assessment to assess student understanding and adjust instruction accordingly. This allows you to address misconception and adapt teaching methods as needed. And also peer and peer assessment. Encourage your student to assess their own work and provide constructive feedback to peer. This develop critical thinking skills and reflection. Okay, now here are some activities for the classroom activity. In here, birthday tree, you can create a birthday tree in your classroom and saying your student to the birthday wish. You don't need to celebrate the big birthday party with the candy and cake. Just only you like to say to your student with a happy birthday mama or happy birthday mama like this. Okay, the next one is the circuit time activity. So circuit time activity can use when you would like to ask a question about your subject or to record their memories or to record your previous lesson. Okay, start with your student with the circuit. Your student sit down as a circuit and first you ask question to your student. Okay, don't start with the subject matter question. Start with how do you feel today? What happened at your home or what happened with your friends? What happened with your family? Like they're asking such kind of question. And then after that, you can ask the question that related with your subject content. And also the third one is you need to add the inclusive photo in your aids. For example, all the teacher prepare for the is a flashcard, a PowerPoint, or tools or something like that. So in here, if you are teaching with the vocabularies about the drawing, walking, talking, in here, you can add the inclusive photo together in your aids. So it can raise their awareness about the inclusive education. And also here, the next one is inclusive language. For example, you didn't use about the words about the disabled, the differently able. So instead of this word, you need to use people with disability or people with a disability. And also be careful about the using of normal children or normal student. Instead of using normal student, you need to use non-disabled person or person with disability like this. So here is the inclusive language is very useful and very effective for inclusive education. Okay, now I would like to present about the UDL. Okay, what is UDL? So UDS mean is a educational framework. So universal design for learning is mean it is an educational framework that aims to make learning accessible and effective for all students, regardless of their abilities, learning styles, or background. It has a three core principles that Siaban will explain more. In 19th, 17th centuries and 1980th century, there was a growing emphasis on inclusive education with aim to integrate students with a disability into the regular classroom. This shift in perspective laid the ground for the UDL. The Center for the Applied Special Technology, we normally know that the CATS, founded in the 1984, and the CATS were instrumental in developing UDL as a comprehensive framework for designing inclusive learning environment. In 19th century, CATS began developing the UDL framework, drawing on the research in the neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and educational theory. The framework was designed to address the varieties in learner needs and provide flexible instructional approaches. CAS published the first version of the UDN guideline in 2002. This guideline provides educators with a specific principle and strategy for implementing UDN in their teaching practice. And it has become promoted by organizations, institutions, and is increasingly integrated into the teacher training programs and education policy and also curriculum development program. It has become a guiding framework for designing curriculum, assessment, and instructional material that benefits for all learners. And also the aim of the union is enable learners to become more self-reliant and expert learner through strategy, instructional planning that recognize and provide for their diverse learning needs. So for the next part, Siavan will explain more. So over to you, Siavan.
Thank you so much, Maimia, for making introduction to the concept, the basic concept of UDL. And I'll take the term and talk more about what UDL mean in a practical setting. Let me share my screen before that. So I'll go with three principles. My email has been talking about the basic concept of UDP. What does UDP mean and how it has been developed? UDP, as my email also mentioned, is about giving more choices to learner in order to accommodate different needs of different learner. This means that giving autonomy, self-determination to learner that in return provides a student and learner with pride in accomplishment, increase the degree to which they feel connected to what they are learning. So this is how UDL is important, giving autonomy to the learner and let the student have pride in their own accomplishment and let them feel better connected to their learnings. There are three key principles of UDL. The first one is multiples means of representation, the what we are going to teach, what we are going to deliver, multiple means of representation. The second one is multiple means of action and expression, how we want to present what we are going to teach, what we want our student to get or learn. The third principle is multiple means of engagement, how the student engage with the content, the learning environment, and maybe like ourselves, the teacher. Let's move to the second part, or the first principle, multiple means of representation. This means what the principle address, what of learning, the aspect of learning, and emphasis on presenting content, the teaching content in diverse way, in different way, in multiple way, in multiple style and preferences. This means that the student with different learning need will be able to accommodate, we will be able to accommodate their different learning style and preferences and needs by using different ways of presenting our content, teaching content to our students. This first principle recognize students, regardless of students, regardless of their level of learning, have various different needs and various different ability to comprehend information. This means that is why the first principle, using multiple way, different way to present our information, is important. So this we might possibly have, for instance, like we have 10 students. Some students may be able to learn the content using just a graph, but that might be simple enough to him or her. But for another 2 or 3 students, reading graph can be very much complicated and very much difficult to grab information. In that way, we can use another visual identity, visual information to help the student. For instance, we can help them to get a better understanding of the contents by using like a color, or maybe using like video animation, or using image. So if I would like to give population information, if I would like to deliver information about demographic in Chin states, maybe presenting that demographic with just a graph may be difficult to some students. If I use some animation, that would mean that another student who might see reading graph difficult might be better understand using that animation. So when we also, this multiple means of expression, representation, also concern with our tone, intonation, the way we speak, we speak, the intonation, the level of our voice. So controlling our own voice is even important. And because maybe like different student, maybe like different hearing ability. So that is how it is important to even understand ourselves when it comes to intonation and our speed. Are we going to first? Are we going to are we delivering the content and the teaching very fast, and the timing and the cueing, voice recognition, all those things. This multiple, considering this aspect of presenting information, is called the first principles of UDA. In very short, we can say this multiple means of representation mean displaying information to the student in a flexible format in various ways, using various different ways. And the example may include like using image, text, graph, or maybe like using table, other visual content, including video, animation. Those things can be the example for the first principles of UDA. If you have question, indeed, you can post in the Q&A. And the second principle is multiple means of action and expression. The principle focuses on the why of learning rather than the aspect, the what of learning, and to engage a student by offering multiple ways for them to become interested. In this second principle, one of the key elements is to recruit student interest, to try to get the student interest by involving them. If the students don't involve themselves in the learning, that would mean we will possibly be able to recruit their interest, and that will handle their learning opportunity. And this includes learners to have different preferences, different options, different choice, giving to them different choice options and freedom to speak in a simple word, giving students more autonomy and freedom. This means students can have should have a flexible method of expression over student alternative way for acquiring, demonstrating their knowledge and skill. Learning, as we all know already, is learning is not just only getting information, not just transferring information to our student. Learning also mean making those information being transferred to the student a usable knowledge. if the learning, what they learn is not usable, then that would be like kind of almost, we would say, meaningless. So practical way would include like, we might possibly, the first, one example here I would like to provide is that at my school, at Victoria Academy, we give students, we divided students into different groups. And we have a small project for them, which we set community impact project. They learn about project cycle management, for instance, as one kind of example. Some students come from a background where they would never know, they never know what project really mean. But when they come to the school, they learn about project cycle management, and they themselves choose a kind of project they want to implement. And they themselves write a proposal, a project proposal, implement themselves, write a narrative report. All those things help them to better understand what does project cycle management really mean. So this may this also give or another this also relate to the third principle, which we call engagement. So the student engage with the learning itself in many in a way that also help them to help us to recruit their interest itself. So the student can also express what they learn using the formal kind of assessment like reading essay. The student can also use like multiple media for presenting their assignment, and maybe like student having like a panel discussion, a kind of classroom panel discussion, where a student then themselves moderate the panel discussion and lead the panel, kind of that. Just many classroom might accommodate discussion activity. Discussion can mean like can be carried out in many ways. If the student themselves design the discussion topic, choose their own topic, and lead themselves the discussion when the teacher is helping by the beside them, helping them to do the in better way. What I would like to emphasize here is that having just a discussion, a small group discussion, may not be enough. What kind of autonomy, freedom, option are we providing to the student for kind of discussion they are having is also very much important. As I already talked about our project. We can create a tailored project for them that they can develop, they can work on. That will really help them to acquire information that they learn, that we want them to learn. So the third principle, moving to the third principle, multiple meaning of engagement is like how learning and recognizing the learning have different way of demonstrating their understanding, expressing what they have learned. I already connect from the second principle that student having their own project, for instance, is also relating to the third principle, engagement. This allowed them to demonstrate their understanding, express what they learn in their own way. And this means we are accommodating different needs of the students to express what they learn. When the students are able to express what they learn or what they can learn, that means the teacher also have the opportunity to absorb what the student, what kind of additional support the student might need. If the student cannot express this their understanding, that would mean that it would be difficult for us to absorb their learning need and their learning level as well. So coming to the still in the third principle, but multiple means of engagement, providing the student stay interested as they are appropriately challenged. UDL, one of the main thing, the key thing to when we talk about UDL, is taking giving more autonomy to the student, as we already mentioned. But having more autonomy to the student having more autonomy also means that they are taking the challenge by themselves. I would say like a kind of risk, taking the risk, and but this always the teachers beside them. We have to, we don't have to really worry when I mentioned the word challenge. This means that when the student have a different, when the student have are able to challenge themselves, able to make their own decision, like this include like not just choosing the topic that they want to learn, but also giving them the option to design their classroom itself. My student, if you come to my school, like go into different classroom, the different classroom designs are different because the classroom are designed by, animated by the student themselves. So class E has their own classroom and they animate it in their own way and in their according to their preferences. Class B also do the same thing. So all the classroom are differences in color and in design and in appearance. So that is a kind of like attracting the student to the classroom, not just only the content of learning. So this empowers the learner to take charge of their own learning by challenging themselves as well. Empower learner to take in charge of their own learning and being better connected to the learning experience. That would mean your learning more meaningful, valuable, more relevant to them. This means the student would also have a sense of a sense of ownership in learning, ownership in the learning environment, the learning space. So the practical classroom example of UDL, I will talk very quickly using multimedia, providing option for demonstrating learning. The third thing I would like to talk about using flexible assessment method. We already mentioned a little bit about those things, so I'm going to be a little bit faster than before. Flexible grouping for collaboration. So the first thing, using multimedia. We can use like we can provide student with like video lecture. We have a lot today with the age of technology. We have a lot of like free videos with uh, 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 for our classroom. And the one of the best thing I love from my classes is tech talk. I use a lot of video from the tech talk, and we can also use like audio recording and visual aids. So just not just using our own PowerPoint presentation, our own test book, we can accommodate it. We can use multiple media that will really help the student learning comprehension. So we can also use like some teacher might already use like live worksheet. This one live worksheet. We can also use like Newpad. We also have like kind of Kahoot, and Mentimeter. A lot of digital tools that engages the student, that make the students like more interactive. I used to have my quiz for as soon as I finished my chapter in my teaching, I used to write quiz for the student, but I never used paper, computer. I mean like a computer. I don't use like kind of like Google survey, but I used to use like Mentimeter or Kahoot, which the tool allow us to make our quest more interactive. And yeah, the second thing is providing option for demonstrating learning. That is what we talk about example. We can, rather than like the student, we already talk about like having a project for the student. And in that way, they can use their knowledge in a practical real-time setting that will help them to learn deeper. This also includes like the student can indeed do like a kind of report or a presentation, assignment, another kind of project. But what I would mention here is like, rather than the student asking a kind of like assignments, rather than calling assignment, can we say like a novel for student? Can we ask the student to write a novel? For instance, for English language learner, they would write a novel, yeah, reflecting their own practical experiences, maybe, yeah. That will actually also related to the second principle, recruiting their interest, the student interest. Multiple means of action and expression, the second principle. These are very much related indeed. So yeah, moving to the third one, using flexible assessment. Yeah, we can assess them with, yeah, open book exam project. My student love open book exam. Yeah, and then yeah, we can yeah, they have like, my student also have like a project. The project we give like a grading to each of their projects, and then we can also help them with like you know, asking the student to have giving them assess and assess. I know. I don't know. This, my student have a lot of time, for instance, to go to use a lab computer room where they can write their own. They can do their own project. We every Friday every Friday evening from 12 to 3, 4 p.m., they have their own time to do their own self-assessments and to do their own activity as a group or maybe as the whole school. So these things means that the student will be more interested in what they are learning, will be given a better sense of like ownership in their learning. And yeah, we are writing now, the Victoria Academy writing school item. The school, we don't have the school item yet, but we are writing it now. But the teachers don't write the school item. The students are writing the item. So that mean yeah, that mean a lot. When I read their script, I was like fully inspired. And then how the student, I have a lot of like I better understand by reading their script. I better understand what they really want from the school as well. Different content based reading levels. This means like various students have various level of comprehension or learning level, learning skills. So the student can be provided different level of reading. For some of our students, our textbook might be very basic. So for in that case, we can have additional reading materials for different level that will help the student who would like to go forward and move to a different level. They will have resources available to them. We are living in Myanmar, we are living in a very low resource setting. If the student can the school can provide different learning material, that will help meant a lot to the students. Yeah, flexible grouping for collaboration. Flexible grouping, the student might choose with whom they would like to collaborate. But when although although it is important to uh, uh, let them choose, we also have to always understand about different student emotion, different student situation. Some student might be ignored by different students. In that way, can we consult one student to accommodate another student that might feel a little bit isolated? When we set flexible, we also have to consider about the student being isolated by their colleague, their classmate. That is very important concern when we talk about class flexibility in group creation, group collaboration. Because I have the experience. Some student, yeah, they have a very close friendship and they would like to collaborate always. And that things has to be in our attention as well, I mean. And then the student, yeah, in their project, the student choose their own leadership, who will be the manager, who will be the finance officer, for instance. They distribute the rule themselves within among them because they know better about their skill and their knowledge. In that way, a student who might be interested in finance, and he or she become accountant for that project, that would mean that they will be better engaged in the projects, and then their activity will be more effective indeed. So a few things to overcome our challenges is challenges to the barrier. To overcome the barrier include we might possibly have to have like teaching, training, professional development because learning from each other. Yeah, yeah, this is the last part. So teaching, training, professional development for ourselves and teacher. There are a lot of things to learn, and the world is evolving in the same way. The way to teach, the way to engage with the student may be changing every day, every single minute, and every year. So getting being refresh our knowledge ourselves, getting involved in different teacher training would be very helpful for our own personal and professional development. So another thing is the school making sure that the teaching facility of materials are available and are in place. This is a very important thing. And then, for instance, when Miami also talk about inclusive education, why should we do like even with the help of the students and our own colleague advocacy, community awareness, yeah, this is much more relevant to when it comes to accommodating people with special ability. Yeah, many people would say people, disabled people, but I would use people with special ability. We have to including LGBT plus, accommodating our raising awareness to the community, the parents, about the needs of LGBT plus and people with special ability. Those things will be a kind of one way to help us help the school overcome the barriers for people and the learner.
Hi, Salav Antonia. I apologize for interrupting, but we're quite over time at this point, so we'll have to close the presentations to allow us enough time for the Q&A. So I'm not sure if you have to hand back to Mia now, but we will have
this
to
is
close.
already the end. Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for reminding.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, I have seen some questions, so we didn't have enough time, so we will answer some questions. So here, and one of the question is that what strategies can be employed to address cultural or society barriers that maybe hinder the implementation of inclusive education with a certain communities? So in here, I had one experience when I was teaching with the Hindu student. They can speak Hindu, I can speak Myanmar. So we have a language barrier between each other. So the first of the session, they run out my classroom. So I make safe and I create a safe environment with them. So I asked to them, what do you want to do? And one of the students told me they would like to recite poem. So okay, let's do it. And they recite poem in Hindu. That's about his God. So we create such kind of environment with them. And in my teaching, one of the students translate to Burmese to Hindu in our classroom. So 2 weeks later, they understand my instructions and my teaching Friday. And during my teaching time, I gave an assignment appropriate with their culture. So presentation about their Hindu snack, example puri like this. So we create such kind of environment with this situation, so we can improve this barrier. We can overcome this barrier. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for starting the Q&A. I think it's great we dive straight in. I wasn't sure if you had a final summation at the end of today's presentation. Well, thank you both for your presentations today. I think they've been wonderfully insightful, both from a theoretical perspective, but also from a practical perspective. So that's really been very helpful for our audience, and certainly for me to understand a little bit more about UDL. I'd like to dive in from a teacher's perspective, first of all, and I'd like to take something that Salavan Sundayan mentioned, and that was group discussion is not enough. And I mentioned that because I think most teachers watching today will probably have some form of group discussion in their classroom. So simply saying we should work in groups is nothing new to teachers. So I'd like to expand on that a little bit, because I'd like to ask the question, when we're thinking about UDL in a practical sense in the classroom, do you think it's more about adapting what teachers already do, or creating new activities that are required for these principles to be put into effect? So I'll start with Salavan Sundayan first of all, and then I'll come to you, Mia, for your opinion on that.
Yes, quickly, when it comes to group discussion, and when I talk about group discussion, a simple group discussion is not enough. I said it doesn't really have to be having a new group discussion approach. I mean, like, yeah, most teacher would really have, they would already have a lot of group discussion activity for their students. We can adapt from that existing method. We can employ existing method. But what I would like to what I meant is that rather than group discussion, can we say like kind of like a panel discussion for the student, like kind of like, even if we teach them about like law, then they can call the group discussion student parliamentary meeting. Yeah, in that way they will plan their group discussion themselves, and
Sure.
then organize themselves and lead themselves. That is
Do
what
you
I
think
mean. Yeah,
do you
thank
think
you.
by changing the title of the group discussion is enough? Within that, is there something else? For example, I think you mentioned
Yes,
roles that students could have within the group, whether it be a
yes,
transcriber, a
yes,
leader,
yeah,
something like this. Do you think that's also important? And perhaps
yes.
is it about routine, or is it something that should be new to the students each time to give them some new experience?
Yeah, that is what I really mean. The students are divided into group. Each group have their own group leader, and then some students are selected as panelists. What in normal group discussion we call them presenter, right? And then panelists. Some students are selected as moderator, and then
Mhm.
some students, when one group present the topic, student from other group serve as the audience, and they ask question in
Yeah.
return, and then the one group who are serving as moderator plus and panelists, they are moderating and responding to another group
Mhm.
questions. So
Okay.
the best thing is to have a kind of round table rather than in like a class formal traditional classroom structure.
Great.
Students are in a round table that would give them meaningful activity to them.
Okay, thank you. That's really insightful. Mia, would you like to add to anything to that?
Yes, in here, Sia mentioned for the adult student when they discuss in the group discussion. For the young learner, so teachers start at the discussion for the rule. For example, in the group there are 10 people. 10 people describe their opinions about the topic, and one of the students write down their opinions with the names, and then the other student present their opinions, and when other groups asking the question, so they must answer according to their session. So
Mhm.
we need to set their duty, all the participant can participate in the group discussion for the young learner. I would like to add some points. Yes, thank you.
Great. So I think these are some really interesting activities that we can do, and something we can consider beyond the activity itself. So adapting activities that we
Yes.
actually do. And I think that's a skill that teachers can develop. So I'd like to jump from that to a question, excuse me, from I Mon in the Q&A box, which asks, how can we relate today's topics into teachers' learning and professional development. So if I can change that slightly, what could teachers focus on in their development to support implementing UDL?
Yes, if you know about the UDN, now you know about your former teacher's time is not enough to be an inclusive teaching method. So you need to learn a lot of teaching methodology, and also to be inclusive, you need to learn about the sign language. In here, the presenter show the sign language. So the teacher, if you have a time, you need to learn about the sign language, or and some this is very important. So if you learn about the new things and new technology in here, Siavan mentioned about the Mentimeters or Kahoot or something like that in the attitude. So that is very related with the teacher development. So teachers are finding their ways to teach to their students. So that is, I think that is related with this webinar is related with the teacher development. Thank you.
Thank you. Salavan, so now if I can change that slightly for yourself, I'd like to focus on something that is related to professional development, but also related to challenges that teachers face. We've mentioned Kahoots and some other online tools such as Mentimeter. But for those teachers who perhaps don't have access to many of the devices or indeed the internet through their classroom, or the students that come into the classroom, how can teachers address this if they don't have similar access between, for example, their urban colleagues and themselves in perhaps rural areas?
So Siavan.
Yeah. One thing is like as long as they have internet connection, the first thing is as long as they have internet connection, these tools can be used with mobile phone. But for instance, like in Chin State, many township in Chin State don't really have internet accessibility currently. In that kind of case, the situation become a little bit like more complicated and challenging. And then, however, we can use, when we use Kahoot, a kind of Kahoot and Mentimeter, the purpose in that is that to get the student interest, attention, and then to make our activity more interactive. And instead of those technological tools, if we have a paper, we can design a similar kind of activity using paper and pencil or pen, a very similar kind, rather than having the student having a list of questions to answer in one paper. Why not we cut the paper for different questions and different quests and distribute it to them, and then maybe like the student can choose the question by, sorry, I was how by like without looking at the question, they choose one paper and read it and answer in a group or maybe individually in the classroom. That make a kind of excitement and interactivity to the students and to the classroom. Yeah.
That actually reminds me of an activity I did in the classroom many years ago, where teachers would, or myself, I would cut in strips of paper and students would write questions on them and carry them to someone else in the class who would write a
Yes.
reply and carry it to someone else. So it actually becomes a writing and an interactive activity. And if I can say, the key word I've taken from what you said there is interaction is important, whether it's through a digital device or tool or indeed through paper. Okay, I think that's really interesting insight. Mia, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, I have such kind of activity. I have a blackboard and tissue paper and water. So I divide it into the two clues and write down the answer on the blackboard. And I make a tissue with the water like a wet ball. So when I ask a question, the two clues throw the wet ball to the board. To the right answer. This is a very interactive way. If we didn't have any interactive tools, it's okay. We can create with our resources. And then there are many ways to create. If you create paper with ties and through the ties a number, you can ask a question according to the ties. So this is we can use low-cost materials. So I think that already mentioned in the first two webinars, such kind of techniques. Yeah.
Great. And I think what you've brought up there with the water and the paper is realia. Sometimes we
Yes.
can use real objects in the classroom as part of the activity. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
There are a number of questions coming in. And of course, I would like to mention to our audience, we won't be able to answer them all today. But what we hope to do is to answer them briefly in writing after today's event and provide them with the PPT and the recording of today's event. So that will be up, I believe, next week. So if we don't answer your question directly today, please, we will do our best to do so after the event. I'd like to go back to the grouping a little bit because we have another question related to that. And I think it's important to think about this. Within groups, of course, we have roles. But what if students all want the same role? Do you have any tips or techniques of how to manage students when they all want similar roles, i.e. they might want to be the group leader, for example, or no one will want to be the note taker within the group? Is there anything that you perhaps would use to help manage that problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
We talk about UDA and giving more autonomy to the student, and at my school, selecting the group leader or even selecting the student council, all these things are done according to democratic principle. The student even run for election campaign for group leader as student council. They run, we give them 1 week for the campaign. They run for the campaign, what they are going to do if they become group leader. They advertise it within the school campus. Even for the student council leadership, they advertise and run for the office and the group leadership. That kind of principle can be adapted. And then always the teacher is beside them and consult the students and to have like kind of democratic citizenship and being tolerance to different perspective and inspiration.
Do you think one of the problems with that, I think that's certainly a way to do it, but do you think an issue with that is that the students will always choose the same person, and those who perhaps don't have that popularity amongst the students may not get a chance to take that role? Is there some reason to choose these roles randomly, maybe through a lottery or something along those lines?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. One thing is that I used the random selection for just a very short activities. Most frequently, one thing I used to use is I ask the student to write down one number that they want, a number that they love. I limit the number range. Choose a number between 1 to 20, for instance, and they roll it. And then I ask, can 7 stand up, please? And then the person who choose number 7 stand up.
Great. Okay, that's a nice way of varying that. Thank you. Now, unfortunately, we did run a little bit over with our presentation, so that squeezed our Q&A time today. But I'd like to close on something about measuring impact and success of these programs. And it's a question provided by an anonymous attendee today. I'd like to ask you both for a very brief answer. It's a big question, but a brief answer just because of time. Do you have any key indicators, and this is perhaps above the classroom to some extent, on how we could measure the impact and success of an inclusive education program? What key indicators might we look for in showing that success? So I'll come to Mia first and then to Saraivan, just a very brief reply.
So in here, for how do we, so your question is how to assess we are successful in inclusive education criteria or not. So in your classroom, all the students work together, the group work actively, participatively. So there is no discrimination about their race, their language, like this. So at that time, you can note that your classroom have a successful about the inclusive education. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Salavan.
Yeah, one of the most indicative from my experience would be is like the student having student providing good feedback to their own teacher and asking more classroom activity and then indeed having more activity arranged by themselves, even maybe like even sport activity, campus activity, classroom activity, as seeing our classroom being designed by our students themselves. All these things indicate the success of involving the student themselves in our learning projects.
An increase in student autonomy within the classroom, I think, is another key indicator.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your contributions today in your presentation, and thank you again to our audience for their questions. As I mentioned before, we will try and answer those we haven't answered in the event today, after the event, and present them to you with the PPTs and the recording. So let me just share my screen again. Let's hope this works as it should. Oh, excuse me. Come back down. I'd like to share with everyone. Now, can I check? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. I'd like to highlight, first of all, the survey, which I mentioned at the beginning of today's event for everyone. On completion of the survey, an e-certificate is available to everyone who has attended today's event. But I think more important than that, your feedback is really important to us to understand how useful the event has been to you and the content, how relevant it has been within your own context. So please do fill in the survey after today's event is completed. It's in a QR code for convenience to take a picture or a screenshot now and fill in later. So thank you for that. I'd also like to highlight two resources. And we had a question today about CPD, or continuing professional development. Sometimes we call it continuous professional development. Here are two resource pages, including articles on what is inclusion and how do we implement it. So this is something you're very welcome to follow up on after today's event as a resource and a reference. And of course, using inclusive practices. So these are some tips and some pieces of information that can support your continuing professional development in addition to today's event. Next week, we have the fourth of our teacher takeaway webinars, and the focus is materials development in the gender context. So this will be focusing on materials we can develop and look at within the context of your classroom, and how this can focus on reducing gender discrimination and increasing gender representation. The QR code is there for you again, so please do take a screenshot, and please again join us for that webinar next week. It should be, in case you don't have a chance to take a screenshot, on the same registration page as the one you used to join today's event. So please do have a look at that, and I'll be back for that next week. Finally, again, we've mentioned this in the two webinars before today and today. In October, we have a Teaching English conference across ASEAN over the month of October. We also have one in China for those interested in that context, and there'll be a multitude of different events there, a menu of speakers and topics that you can choose from. So I do hope that you can join us for that. We don't have a QR code for that at the moment, but this is the QR code for the Teaching English Facebook for East Asia and ASEAN, and there will be updates on that Facebook page, so please do follow that for more updates. And that brings us to a close for today's event. So I'd really just like to reiterate my thanks to today's presenters, Mia and Saravan. Thank you so much for your presentations. I think very insightful and really great answers to the questions that were put forward as well. Some great questions coming in, some at a much higher level than the classroom, but some also at the classroom level. And we do hope to answer those after today's event and present them to you, hopefully by next week, along with PPTs and today's recording. So thank you so much, everyone, for your participation today. I'm going to sign off for now. I really hope to see you next week for the fourth Teacher Takeaway webinar. Thank you very much, and bye for now.
Thank you.